Good morning, afternoon, evening, or night, ladies, gentlemen, and otherwise. My name is Marcus Future, you can call me the Timeline Man, and welcome to another devlog for A New Dawn for the Elements, a game being made in RPG Maker MV. I said this in the summer devlog, but there still isn't anything terribly flashy to report. There are a few new CGs being made, but they're in plot important, so I kind of don't want to show you guys that. There have been a few bug fixes, implementing new assets in old places, and making new scenes and maps that already exist. However, there are a couple things I failed to bring up in previous time frames I'd like to bring up now. First of all, I figured out I put this company logo in here. I forgot to mention that. Well, I got that done this season. But first of all, we've got a picture gallery. I haven't brought this up yet. Obviously none of them are unlocked right now because I just started up a new game. I also added in the oh, I disabled it. I've been working on making a the quest journal system using Yonfly's system. And let me look again at my notes here. Yeah, I haven't got it working in the parts of the game that exist yet. Basically, my current plan is, when I finish Chapter 3, I'm going to go back, I'm going to make the first 3 chapters really polished. That includes putting in all of the gameplay elements, balancing, fixing up any bugs that I encounter, and I'm going to release that as a demo. The first 3 chapters will be its own demo. Anyway, this fall, I've completed a couple things, including, let me get it here. Where is it? Where is it? Wait a minute. Oh, yeah, here it is. This is Jimmy's Forest. Currently working on, I'm probably going to extend it lengthwise a little bit. So that, because this is kind of currently the only, I guess you'd call it a dungeon section for Chapter 2. It's the only one that's going to be in Chapter 2. It's a little bit different than the caves that dominate Chapter 1, the caves in the desert, singular. This is going to be the only place where you really encounter enemies that are random encounters. There's some fighting that happens before this, but this is where the bulk of really the gameplay of Chapter 2 will happen. I made 2 versions of Jonathan's neutral expression. I'm currently working on the other expressions now, hopefully. Hopefully I'm showing you guys the 2 versions side by side. I made one version, forgot I had made that version, started working on a new version, looked at the old version, and went, oh, that looks bad. We're not going to use that. I also made this boy right here. This sparkly lad. This is going to be used for gathering points and investigatable items throughout the world. So yeah, you're going to see a lot of this boy littering through the game by the time the demo comes out. For now, what I'm implementing it for is well, right now, this doesn't do anything, but it's going to be used for gathering points. And part of that is that I want it to be one of a few random items so that you can leave the map and come back and get different items so that you can create. I want to make the crafting system valuable. I don't want you to just go, well, okay, cool, he can do the crafting system. It's kind of, it's Alderand's whole thing. Because, he is not very strong. He starts at level 1. A lot of the other characters don't start at level 1. But yeah. He starts at level 1. Now then, beyond what I've actually accomplished in the last few months, which was relatively minor but still very important, I'm doing some thinking about the game, and I'm telling it to you guys as a way to pad the video's runtime. I've done this once before, but I think this topic is a little more suited to being paired to the devlog itself, as it does relate to this game, and also to Sunset of the Elements. Sunset of the Elements was, without a doubt, a very plot or objective-focused game. Beyond directing you to the next dungeon or plot point, there was very little going on in the required cutscenes of the game. Most scenes followed this flow. Resolve the previous objective or plot beat, establish the next objective, establish the process to achieve the next objective, optional, foreshadow the end of the game and characterize the party a little bit. This was largely due to my goal with Sunset of the Elements, which was to finish some sort of long-term project. I had taken the sage advice of older developers, which was to make a smaller project. Of course, they probably meant something more game jam size, which I did do during the course of Sunset's development. But I took that initially to make a game that is done before trying too hard to make a game that is good. Which made sense to me. Too many developers get trapped in a cycle of perfectionism and never release a game, and I wanted to avoid that. Sunset of the Elements was that dodge. Obviously, I've now proven to myself and the world that I'm capable of making a game that can be called finished. So now I'm trying to make it something that I can call good. To that end, I've considered the importance of plot to this particular game. In the vein of a philosopher, I will clarify what I mean by plot, as to not cause confusion between my intention and the audience's perception. When I say plot, I'm talking about the sequence of events that occur in the story that cause the game state to move forward. In my previous game, the whole game was centered around the plot. Very little occurred because of the characters, it was all the function of the plot. And Sunset of the Elements doesn't hide that at all. Almost the entire game, you're doing tasks at the behest of someone entirely unrelated to the party. I would call this a plot-driven story. In a popular cloud of entertainment, these tend to be viewed as boring, and to a degree I can understand and agree with that assessment. It's also a structure more accepted in video games, though not usually in RPGs. It works for games because the appeal of the game is playing the game, which usually hinges on the completion of objectives to unlock more objectives, etc. I'm not saying the stories of non-RPG games are flat, but rather that a non-RPG with a flat story is more widely acceptable today than an RPG with a flat story, especially a turn-based RPG. This coincides with the popular sentiment that turn-based RPG gameplay is boring. I personally disagree, but I'm just one opinion on the internet, where literally millions of those exist, and a lot of them say turn-based RPG gameplay boring. The only thing worthwhile about them is their stories. I have my opinions about this opinion, but this video isn't about that. Rather, this is about making the story of my game here interesting, the obstacles I face, my goals to make the story interesting, and how my perspective on making this story is very different from the things I put out in the past. As stated in the title, the plot of my game is not the point this time around, instead focusing more on the characters, their desires, and how they feel about the plot, etc. The first biggest obstacle to that goal is the size of the cast that I've written. New Dawn for the Elements is about the elemental spirits, of which there is some background info on if you look for it in Sunset of the Elements. Specifically, there's info on the number of spirits. I've made all of those characters listed into a playable, important character in New Dawn for the Elements. That makes 15 party members with their own motivations, goals, backstories, designs, all that, counting Liam. Of course, after about a month of actually making the game, I realized I had come up with a plan that was way too big for me to make it for it to be, well-paced and fun. Ultimately, a number of character arcs and story relations have been simplified for the final product, but I still have their original, overly detailed selves in my memory. Maybe someday they'll be shared with you. So it's a balancing act. In order to allow all the characters to breathe, they need to get a story moments, but if I give every character equal story moments, the story is bound to become bloated. So how do I go about this? Well, to say I figured it out completely would be an outright lie. I'll say this, something of an evolving process. I'm very much writing a lot of these things as I go. I have a general plan for how the 3 different stories go and how they'll ultimately meet, and thus how the game will end. But most of the steps between there are subject to change. A lot of that change ultimately boils down to the whole pacing thing, which will be its own thing to talk about. The only way I currently maintain the balancing act is to choose 1 or 2 important guys for a chapter, basically making them the protagonist for the day. There are a couple characters that will likely never have this honor. That reminds me, I haven't really considered there to be a singular protagonist for the game. I'm an enjoyer of ensemble cast stories, and I think this is it's fun to write this way. Plus, it kind of removes some of the logistical issues of telling a story of such a diverse and disparate cast. The issue with pacing is the way I experience the game in testing is not going to be accurate to the pace of someone experiencing it for the first time like you guys will when I release the game. I mean, I wrote the damn thing, and by the time this whole thing is over, I'm fairly certain I'm going to have seen many of the things in this game over 100 times. If I'm not able to do at least an any percent speedrun of this game upon release, there's probably something wrong with me. Because of that, I can't entirely be sure how well paced the section of the game is. I might add in a small section for character building to try to allow for players to have more game time to bond with the party members, but it's possible that the players will actually see that as dragging the game's pacing. Ultimately, I think it'll depend on how well executed each section is, as well as how natural it feels as a story beat. For example, if I were to have a section where Quicksilver were to just flex his shirt off to justify a wacky stealth section to buy him a new shirt, that would be bloated. It would seem stupid. But if I were to, say, have a story beat where Aldebaran and Ivor go out on a raft and end up, that shit gets destroyed in the ocean and then they wash up on different parts of the shore and they have to find each other, that would make more sense as a plot beat and would give the game more time to show you who these characters are. Ultimately, pacing is going to be a fine-tuning issue right up until the day the game releases. Hopefully this time I'll be able to get a few playtesters to actually help out. I stated in a previous devlog that I would be adding voice acting to my game. Unfortunately, due to a change in financial situation and general lack of applicants at the moment, that bit has been put on hold. I'm not canceling it, I still have the lines and credit to give to the actors when they are added, but for now I'm unable to move forward with that particular avenue of development. If this changes, it will be in a pinned comment below. Hey, while you're down there, you might as well subscribe to the channel to see future updates to the game, because if you do, and you continue to see my content as it allows me to, hopefully, eventually, alleviate this obstacle with some money. Obviously, in the current world, I need to make money to live, and while this game is still being made, it's not going to make me any money. So a lot of my time in life is spent at a full-time regular job, and while I don't resent this in the least, it is a factor that slows down development. I think that's it. I'm fairly certain this devlog will be the longest one I've put out, ever. I'm trying something new here. I gathered all my thoughts for the devlog ahead of time. I actually made this script. A large chunk of this script got made in like September and October. So it's I've been sitting on this for a little bit. Thank you guys for watching. Until next we meet, stay safe out there and take care of each other, because no one deserves to be alone when the going gets rough.